The world holds its breath, gripped by a sense of uncertainty and dread that stretches far beyond the borders of the Middle East. In living rooms, offices, and government buildings across the globe, people anxiously follow every update, aware that the decisions made in the coming days could reshape the course of history. The Middle East, a region already marked by decades of tension and conflict, now teeters on the very edge of a devastating new war. The air is thick with anticipation, as the world wonders if diplomacy can prevail, or if violence will once again erupt and engulf the region. Intelligence reports from American, European, and Israeli officials paint a stark picture. Israel is in the final stages of preparing a unilateral military strike against Iran. The operation could be launched at any moment, potentially within days, leaving little time for last-minute negotiations or interventions. The primary targets are Iran's nuclear facilities, which are believed to be perilously close to producing a nuclear weapon. These sites, heavily fortified and shrouded in secrecy, have long been a source of international concern and debate. The stakes could not be higher, as a successful strike might set back Iran's nuclear ambitions, but could also ignite a wider regional conflict. The United States under President Trump is urging restraint and pushing for a diplomatic solution, hoping to avoid a catastrophic escalation. Yet, Israel's resolve appears unwavering, driven by a deep-seated fear of a nuclear-armed Iran and a determination to act before it's too late. In a sign of just how serious the situation has become, the U.S. has begun evacuating embassy staff and military families from key locations across the region. Armored vehicles patrol embassy compounds, and families are hurriedly boarding military transport planes, bracing for the possibility of imminent conflict. At the highest levels of the U.S. military, CENTCOM's commander has postponed crucial congressional hearings to focus entirely on the unfolding crisis. Military leaders are locked in urgent discussions, weighing every possible scenario and preparing for rapid response. These are not routine actions. They are extraordinary measures that signal a global power bracing for impact. Emergency sirens blare in cities, newsrooms scramble to cover breaking developments, and crisis hotspots are highlighted on maps around the world. For millions of ordinary people living in the region, the threat of war is not an abstract concept, it is a terrifying reality. Families huddle together in their homes, civilians rush to shelters, and city streets are filled with anxious faces, all hoping for peace but preparing for the worst. The coming days will be critical. The world watches and waits to see whether the region can step back from the abyss, or if it will plunge into a conflict with consequences that could reverberate across the globe for years to come. At the core of this crisis is Iran's nuclear program. Iran is enriching uranium to 60%, dangerously close to weapons grade and far beyond the 2015 nuclear deal's limits. The IAEA recently censured Iran for non-compliance, citing undeclared nuclear sites and hidden activities. Iran responded with defiance, announcing new enrichment sites and advanced centrifuges at Fordow. This escalation has created a dangerous feedback loop. As Iran advances, Western fears and threats grow, prompting further Iranian defiance. The space for peaceful resolution is shrinking rapidly. The nuclear question is no longer technical, it's the central justification for a potential war. Both sides are fast approaching a point of no return. Tehran insists its nuclear program is peaceful, emphasizing that its ambitions are rooted in scientific progress and national development. Iranian officials repeatedly state that their nuclear activities are transparent and monitored by international agencies, and that the country has every right to pursue advanced technology for the benefit of its people. They argue that nuclear energy is essential for meeting Iran's growing energy demands and for advancing medical research, such as cancer treatment and diagnostic imaging. For many Iranians, the nuclear program is a symbol of self-reliance and progress, a way to secure a brighter future in the face of international isolation and sanctions. Iranian leaders frame Western pressure as nuclear apartheid, a term that resonates deeply with the public. This narrative fuels national pride and a sense of resistance, uniting people across political divides. The nuclear issue has become a rallying point, a matter of dignity and defiance against what many see as unjust double standards imposed by powerful nations. In this climate, any concession to Western demands is seen as surrendering sovereignty, an act that is politically impossible for leaders in Tehran. The government faces intense pressure from hardliners and the public alike to stand firm, making compromise a risky proposition. But Western intelligence agencies remain deeply skeptical of Iran's intentions. They point to secret sites, undeclared nuclear material, and ongoing missile development as evidence that Iran's program may not be as peaceful as claimed. These suspicions are reinforced by past instances of concealment and a lack of full transparency. Iran's enrichment levels far exceed what is needed for civilian energy production, raising international fears of a hidden military agenda. The technical capabilities being developed could, in theory, allow Iran to move quickly toward building a nuclear weapon if it chose to do so. The West believes Iran is seeking breakout capability, the ability to assemble a nuclear bomb before the world can react. This scenario keeps diplomats and military planners on edge, as it would fundamentally alter the security landscape of the Middle East. Even without an actual weapon, the mere possibility of Iran acquiring one would shift the regional balance of power. It would embolden Iran and its proxies, increasing their influence and potentially sparking a new arms race among neighboring countries. For Iran, nuclear capability is seen as the ultimate deterrent against regime change, a shield against foreign intervention. The memory of past conflicts and external threats looms large in the national psyche, making the pursuit of nuclear technology a matter of survival as much as ambition. The quest for nuclear technology is inseparable from a quest for power, security, and respect on the world stage. It is a complex interplay of science, politics, and national identity, with each side convinced of the righteousness of its cause. This fundamental distrust between Iran and the West drives the crisis to the brink, leaving the world to wonder whether compromise is possible, or if confrontation is inevitable. The current crisis is the result of failed diplomacy. Years of painstaking negotiations, back-channel communications, and high-stakes summits have ultimately unraveled, leaving both sides more entrenched than ever. Hopes for a peaceful resolution have faded, replaced by mutual suspicion and a growing sense of inevitability about conflict. Months of US-Iran talks collapsed when Tehran flatly rejected America's demand for zero uranium enrichment. The atmosphere in the negotiation rooms grew increasingly tense, with each side accusing the other of intransigence and bad faith. American diplomats insisted that any enrichment capability would leave the door open for Iran to develop nuclear weapons, while Iranian negotiators argued that their nation's sovereignty and dignity were at stake. Iran's supreme leader saw this as a demand for surrender, not negotiation. For him and the Iranian leadership, agreeing to zero enrichment would mean capitulating to Western pressure and betraying the sacrifices of the Iranian people. The supreme leader's public statements have only hardened the country's stance, making compromise politically impossible. The US and Israel believe any deal allowing enrichment leaves Iran's breakout capability intact. Israeli officials in particular have warned that even limited enrichment could allow Iran to quickly assemble a bomb if it chose to do so. This fear has driven a wedge between Washington and its European allies, some of whom favor a more flexible approach. Iran insists its right to enrich is non-negotiable. Iranian leaders point to international treaties that guarantee peaceful nuclear technology, and they accuse the West of double standards. For many Iranians, the nuclear program has become a symbol of national pride and resistance to foreign domination. This deadlock has left hawks in Washington and Tel Aviv arguing that only force can resolve the issue. Hardliners on both sides have gained influence, drowning out voices calling for patience and dialogue. The risk of miscalculation is growing, as military planners prepare for scenarios that once seemed unthinkable. The Trump administration opposes a unilateral Israeli strike, fearing regional war and global economic chaos. American officials worry that a sudden attack could ignite a wider conflict, drawing in other countries and disrupting vital oil supplies. Yet their warnings have done little to ease Israeli anxieties. Yet it cannot restrain Israel, which refuses to stand down. Israeli leaders have made it clear that they will act alone if necessary, citing existential threats and the lessons of history. Military preparations continue, with Air Force drills and emergency cabinet meetings signaling that Israel is ready to strike if diplomacy fails. The US is caught trying to prevent a war its closest ally seems determined to start. American diplomats shuttle between capitals, urging restraint and searching for last-minute solutions. But the window for compromise is rapidly closing. The diplomatic vacuum has made military confrontation more likely than ever. With trust shattered and communication channels breaking down, the world watches anxiously as the threat of war looms larger with each passing day. For Israel, a nuclear-armed Iran is an existential threat. Iranian leaders' hostile rhetoric and missile development fuel Israeli fears. Stopping Iran's nuclear ambitions is a consensus across Israeli politics. Years of sabotage and covert attacks have only delayed, not stopped, Iran's progress. Israeli intelligence believes the window to act is closing fast. Soon, Iran's program may be too advanced to strike. The zone of immunity nightmare drives Israel toward preemptive action. Civil defense drills and missile defense upgrades have prepared the public for conflict. For Israel, the ticking clock is a countdown to a fateful decision: strike now, or face a nuclear Iran later. Israel's urgency is driven by a fleeting military advantage. In late 2024, Israeli strikes damaged much of Iran's S-300 air defense network, creating a temporary vulnerability. Iran is racing to repair and upgrade its defenses, shrinking Israel's window to strike. Delay means higher risk and less chance of success. Israel has trained for this operation for years, developing bunker-buster bombs and complex flight plans. The mission would be perilous, requiring flawless execution and no direct U.S. military support. Israeli planners must weigh the chance of success against the certainty of massive Iranian retaliation. The region stands on the edge of war. Iran has responded to Israeli threats with stark warnings and military displays. The IRGC's commander promises a history-making retaliation if attacked, far surpassing previous strikes. Iran's recent drills and new missile tests signal readiness for war. Iran threatens not just Israel but U.S. bases across the region, raising the stakes for Washington. By linking Israeli action to U.S. targets, Iran hopes to deter both adversaries. Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, has adopted a firm, unified stance. Iran will not yield to coercion. Any Israeli attack would likely trigger a multi-front regional war. The cost of conflict would be catastrophic for all involved. This crisis is the result of years of escalating conflict and proxy wars. Israel's 2023 Gaza campaign activated Iran's network of militias, sparking attacks across the region. In 2024, Iran broke precedent by launching direct missile and drone strikes at Israel. Israel responded with targeted attacks, including crippling Iran's air defenses. This tit-for-tat escalation has destroyed red lines and deterrence, making all-out war increasingly likely. Deep mistrust and animosity now make diplomatic de-escalation nearly impossible. Both sides see the other as an implacable enemy, making preemptive war seem inevitable. From the West's perspective, Israel and Iran are locked on a collision course. Iran's nuclear program is seen as an existential threat. Israel's resolve to stop it is absolute. Failed diplomacy and the collapse of talks have left no off-ramps. Israel's temporary military advantage adds urgency to strike before Iran rebuilds its defenses. Both sides are driven by irreconcilable goals and profound mistrust. With direct strikes already exchanged, the barriers to war have eroded. The question is no longer if war will happen, but when, and how devastating it will be.